After yet another disappointing playoff run, the Toronto Maple Leafs and Kyle Dubas are going their separate ways as the Leafs are moving on from Dubas, not extending him past this year. And with that, Jason Spezza, the assistant to the general manager, has also resigned. So let's take a quick look at the tenure of Kyle Dubas. So 5 years, May 11th, 2018 to May 19th, 2023. Almost 5 years on the dot, 5 years, 8 days. So Toronto fans, what do you think? Is this something that you're happy with? Are you disappointed that Dubas isn't coming back? Honestly, you're probably going to get a mix. A lot of people liked him. A lot of people hated him. But let's go through what he did with the Toronto Maple Leafs and you be the judge. In his time in Toronto, there was 204 signings worth $627,809,555. I can't believe I said that name properly. And then we have drafted 44 players and 71 trades in 5 years, which is pretty crazy. But let's go through, we're not going to go through every signing and every trade, but first let's just see what he did. So looking into what the Maple Leafs did under Dubas as a general manager, in the first year, 100 points, 82 games. So a good year, but unfortunately they fell in round one. Look how good Boston was on home ice. On the road, they weren't that great, but wow, that's insane. And then this year they even did better than that. But I'm not talking about the Boston Bruins here. We're talking about the lovely Toronto Maple Leafs. Moving on to the next year, this was a little bit of a shorter season, I believe, due to COVID, but they end up finishing 8th in the division, where they had a play-in game against the Columbus Blue Jackets, where they actually fell in game number 5. So technically they didn't even make it to the playoffs or the first round of the playoffs, as Columbus came back. I believe they won that series 2-1, which was a disappointing year for obviously the Toronto Maple Leafs faithful. Moving on to 2020-2021, this was the shortened season due to COVID-19, where they actually finished first in their division, 77 points as they dominated Canada essentially, but again falling in the first round of the playoffs. And I believe this time it was to the Montreal Canadiens, if I am correct. They were up 3-1 in the series. They came back, lost the captain John Tavares in game number 1 due an unfortunate play. Moving on to 2021-2022, where again 115 points, the best season so far under Dubas's tenure, where they had 54 wins, 21 losses, 7 overtime losses. But you know how it goes. They played the Tampa Bay Lightning in round number 1, and they fell in 7 games there. And then obviously we got 2022-2023, which was this last year, 111 points, where they matched up once again against the against the Tampa Bay Lightning, not the Toronto Maple Leafs, same thing though. But this time they finally, for the first time in 20 years, get past the Tampa Bay Lightning and the first round. And they go on to play the Florida Panthers, the last seeded team in the Eastern Conference, but Florida eliminates them in 5 games as they completely dominate them, giving Toronto a second round exit. And about a week and a half later, Dubas and Toronto Maple Leafs separate from each other. Now let's go take a look at some of the big transactions that happened under Dubas's watch. Keep in mind, I'm not going to be able to go through every one of these. I'm going to skim through really quickly. Obviously, pause the video if you don't remember any of these transactions. But we're going to start in 2018. And the big one, let's start with May 11th, 2018. Kyle Dubas named general manager. And the first thing he did was sign captain John Tavares, well, not captain this time, but John Tavares, to a 7-year contract. I mean, John Tavares coming over, that's a huge piece. Obviously a really good player. They signed him to a massive deal, though. I think it was 10, maybe $11 million. I think he's great, but it's a lot of money to pay to a player when you definitely have Marner and Matthews, who are going to be chewing up a lot of your cap space. But that's all that really happened in 2018. 2019 started with a splash right away. Activated Zach Hyman. Doesn't really matter here, but we're going to go straight to the 28th, where they acquired Jake Muzzin from the LA Kings for a 2019 first round pick, Grundstrom, and the rights to Sean Druzy. Druzy actually ended up being pretty good for LA this year. The first round pick I'm okay with because Jake Muzzin played really well for the Toronto Maple Leafs. The only problem was he's been injured a lot and he missed this year's playoff run, which was obviously a huge blow to his team. February 5th, 2019, signing Austin Matthews to that 5-year massive extension. Is he going to stay there? Who knows, especially with Dubas gone, don't know where his head is at, but he is an unrestricted free agent next offseason, so that's always going to be a story to look out for. Anything else here that we want to talk about? Signed President Brendan Shanahan to a 6-year extension on May 14th, who essentially ended up getting rid of Dubas. We have a couple more moves here in June where they traded Patrick Marleau to Carolina for a conditional first-round pick, which is always terrible. Signing Kasperi Kapanen to a 3-year contract extension and Johnson to a 4-year contract extension. This one, not the best contract extension. Kasperi Kapanen, I don't mind that one. They end up moving him later in the year. We have the first big trade here where there's multiple pieces, and we got Nikita Zaitsev and Connor Brown and Sarkone to Ottawa for Cody Ceci, Ben Harper, Luckchuck, and a 3rd-round pick. So definitely a loss for this trade just because Connor Brown is by far the best player in this entire package. Cody Ceci's gone on to play pretty well for the Edmonton Oilers, but he was terrible in Toronto, so definitely was a bad pick. But getting rid of Zaitsev was great, but Connor Brown would have been an absolute beast for them. Signed Jason Spezza to a 1-year contract, which I love to see because I'm a huge Spezza fan. I was hoping that he would win a Stanley Cup, but Toronto sucks and it never happened. And then acquired Tyson Barrie, Alex Kerfoot, and a 6th-round draft pick from Colorado for Nazem the Dream Kadri, Rosen, and a 3rd-round pick. I know a lot of people hated the trade. I don't think it's the best trade, but hear me out. Tyson Barrie was supposed to be good. He played okay for them, but he's really just a power play specialist. Kerfoot was still playing well for them, still plays for them for this year, but Nazem the Dream Kadri has been absolutely outstanding since joining I think the Colorado Avalanche. So that's a big loss there. Ends up going to the Calgary Flames as well. But losing Kadri definitely was not very good for the Toronto Maple Leafs, we can say. And then the rest here, fired coach Mike Babcock, and nothing really else for 2019. 2020, not a lot went down, at least in this transaction sheet. Obviously, there's probably some things missing here, but I think the biggest thing is TJ Brody signed to a 4-year contract. I think in this playoff run, TJ Brody, I know that Morgan Rielly had the most points for a defenseman, but TJ Brody was solid. I thought he was their best defenseman. In 2021, a lot went down. This was all the taxi squad stuff. So I'm going to skim through it really quickly. And I think the first thing I want to talk about in 2021, obviously I'm going to miss some things, wave Jimmy Vesey, but was this big trade here. So acquired Ben Hutton from Anaheim in exchange for a 5th-round pick. That was first trade. I don't think that was a bad trade for a 5th-round pick. Ben Hutton, take your chances on it. Acquired Nick Foligno from Columbus for a 1st-round pick. See, I think Nick Foligno played really well for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but he's not worth a 1st-round pick in my opinion. Acquired Stefan Noesen from San Jose for a 4th-round pick. Again, doesn't really matter. David Riddick for a 3rd-round pick. Not the best trade there. And then obviously some more taxi squad stuff. Going through this list, seeing if I see anything else. Signed Travis Dermott, doesn't really make that big of a deal in my opinion. In July, acquired Jarrett McCann from Pittsburgh in exchange for Hallander and a 7th-round pick. This was a phenomenal trade, getting Jarrett McCann. Unfortunately, McCann did not work out as much as they hoped he would in Toronto. Ends up going to Seattle in a bit and has a 40-goal season. So definitely a miss there. Hopefully they wish that they can grow him a little bit better, but that's the nature of the game. Some players just don't mesh well with each other. Going through anything else we can go through here. Not seeing anything. Ended Jason Spezza's suspension. But that's really it for 2021. 2022, we'll go through this quickly. First thing I see is acquired Adam Brooks off waivers from Vegas. Didn't really turn out to be anything, so nothing to talk about there. Going through to sign, promote it, reassign, activate it. Looks like we got some sort of trade here. Waived Kyle Clifford, acquired Mark Giordano, Colin Blackwell from Seattle in exchange for a 2nd-round pick, a 2nd-round pick, and a 3rd-round pick. I like Giordano. I think he was good, but he's definitely not worth 2 seconds and a 3rd. That was probably a miss on Dubas's radar. He does love trading his picks away, though. He does like trading his picks away. Recalled, reassigned, recalled, reassigned. Nothing there to go over. Assigned. Signed Mark Giordano to a 2-year extension, which ended up being a very contract friendly, not family friendly, deal. Signed a couple other youngins. announced retirement of Carter Hutton, which didn't really pan out for them, a move they made in 2021. Signed Timothy Liljegren to a 2-year contract, which was nice. A small little trade we don't need to go too much into. We got a nice signing here, entry-level contract, and Ilya Samsonov, which was a very good contract there. Abu Kabel, not a bad sign there as well. A couple more signings. Kalle Järnkrok, who ended up playing first-line minutes in the playoffs, so definitely a pretty good signing there. Not a first-liner, don't recommend it. Pierre Engvall gets signed to a 1-year deal. Signed Rasmus Sandin to a 2-year contract. They eventually offload him to the Washington Capitals, which I like him. I think that's a good pickup for the Washington Capitals. And then in October, obviously a bunch of wave players claimed, recalled, and assigned, reassigned, however you want to put it. Same with November and December. And in 2023, a lot of the same. Obviously, I've probably missed a bunch of players and a bunch of trades right now, but there's just so much to look at. He did, as you saw, 70 trades, 300 signings, or whatever the number was, $600 million. But I'm just trying to get the big ones. Recalled Wayne Train Simmons, didn't really play in the last year. Michael Bunting from suspension. But that's, really it. So at the end of the day, Vegas is down 1-0, by the way, if you were wondering. At the end of the day, what do you think about Kyle Dubas? Was it a successful tenure? Obviously, didn't win the Stanley Cup, but he put together one of the best rosters that you can put together in a salary cap era, led by Austin Matthews, led by Mitch Marner, led by John Tavares, led by Morgan Rielly. So many good players. But my question to end the video to you Leafs fans, is it Kyle Dubas' fault? Is it the players' fault? Is it the coach's fault? Is it the fan base's fault? Whose fault is Toronto's success of failing? Or is it just that the NHL is so difficult that no matter how good your team is, it's going to happen. You're going to lose games. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. I think the Ottawa Senators win a Stanley Cup before the Toronto Maple Leafs, but that's all I got to say. See ya. Bye.